Hello and welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason Mann, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. We have some news to talk about. Anthony Bennett, former number one pick, was waived by the Brooklyn Nets and has not been a good career for him. Very strong argument for him that he may be the worst bust for number one pick in NBA history.
Yeah, you said former Brooklyn Net. I think he's a former NBA player at this point, too, because it's hard to imagine now, 4 teams in 4 years. Obviously, the Cleveland Cavaliers seemed like so long ago that he was even on that team or even drafted number one. And you're really, where does he go after this? Does anybody take a flyer on him? Do people take chances on him? Because he's been to different spots and he's been to even like Brooklyn would be a perfect spot for him this year. You would assume, okay, here, we're not going to be very good. We're kind of a developmental team. Here you go. And he hasn't really done anything even on Brooklyn. There's been talks about his work ethic. There's just so many red flags going on with him that I just can't fathom. I'm sure some team at some point will bring him in for, summer league or tryouts or something like that. But I just don't see him ever being a rotational or even like a regular NBA player anymore. I'd be shocked if it did happen.
Yeah, his stats, his career stats are...
don't look at them. No, don't. No. Why?
0.12 win shares for 48, 4.4 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, not good. Less than 40% shooting. So, yeah, everything there is pretty awful. The fact that he can't even get... be on the roster of the worst team in the league is obviously saying something.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It'd be like, I understand why Cleveland got rid of him. And I see Toronto, they had them last year, but they're working on bigger and better things. But this is Brooklyn. That's like, you know what? We don't need you anymore. That's not good. That's bad.
Yeah. And the obvious comparison, I think, is LaRue Martin, who we'll get into in a few months. I think we're going to just go through we decided to go back to 1966, which is the first year that the NBA no longer had the territorial draft. Before then, the territorial picks were allowed before the regular picks, so the drafts are kind of funny. But from 66, basically you're having the same rules as you have today. So I think it's more of an apples to apples comparison. So we're just going to kind of go through, talk about each player who's drafted number one, and get a sense of the variability, because there's a lot of guys who obviously some greatest of all time players like Kareem, LeBron, and all to your Anthony Bennett and LaRue Martins. So
yeah, it's interesting, and kind of what spawned this is, of course, with Anthony Bennett, and there are quite a few that we're going to talk about here, but the volatility of like the number one overall pick is very interesting. And I guess maybe we can delve into it a little bit later of why there seems to be so many, or if there is that many. That's kind of, I guess, the real question, because people kind of look at number one overall picks. And like you said, there are those all-timers, those, all-time greats, top 5, top 10, top 15 type players. But there are a lot of guys that are just, I hate the word bust because I don't think that's really fair, but guys that just never lived up to the potential of being a number one overall pick. And a lot of guys that just never lived up to the potential of being like everyday NBA players. And you find it hard to believe that, like, with, that you're picking number one, you have everybody in the world to pick from, and like you pick this guy, and then for some of these people within a few years it was already like, well, this guy's terrible. Or like in some cases Anthony Bennett was almost immediate. LaRue Martin was another one too, where like 10 minutes into his first game it was like, ah, damn it, well, sorry, like shouldn't have done. And like I'm always fascinated by that, because it's like you have like anybody in the world you can pick, and you've had all this time and all this resources to do it. But I guess that's it. But you assume that NBA, like, I get it with the football because injuries can happen, and baseball, of course, is super, as you're going through the minor leagues. It's really hard. But basketball, it seems like a very easy one to kind of scout and say, this guy is great, we should draft him number one. But there are so many cases, though, where those guys just don't turn out at all. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think, obviously there are some just can't miss guys, your greatest ever, who are going to be important on that, given health, of course. And then when it gets slightly below that, that's when it's really tough. Fit obviously matters. The translation between college and the pros, that often is very different styles of games, obviously, especially today. So it is really interesting what guys do well and what guys don't do well. And obviously injuries come into play with a lot of these guys, which you can't really, usually can't predict unless they had issues in college. But right. Yeah, there are so many factors. It is, other than maybe like the slam dunk level, like, okay, this guy has talent, and even a couple of those guys, kind of had disappointing NBA careers. Other than that, it is a crapshoot in many cases, even when you're drafting that high.
Absolutely.
So first, 1966, the New York Knicks drafting Cazzie Russell from Michigan, and he was part of those early Knicks dynasty teams. He eventually kind of lost his starting spot to Bill Bradley, who had been a college rival with, and he was pretty good off the bench, and then ended up with the Warriors and Lakers later on in his career. Carved out a solid enough career. Played 11 years. Had 1.12 inches for 48 throughout his career. 15 points per game. Definitely an okay, to pretty good player for his career, but probably disappointing for a number one pick.
Yeah, fine, but yeah, as you're saying, like we'll go over some guys here. I mean, he's certainly I don't know what kind of pocket we put him in, or if we have this like folders that we're throwing guys in, but yeah, I think he'd decent but disappointing is probably the best way to describe him.
Yeah. The next, similar boat, probably a little bit worse, Jimmy Walker for the Detroit Pistons.
The Dynamite guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Same guy, right?
Jalen Rose's father, I guess estranged father, but...
Rose's father is the Dynamite guy? I'm just joking. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I apologize.
All right, that's all right.
I will never derail this podcast ever again. I apologize.
Richard, you are not giving people what they want right now. So.
You're right, sorry.
So he played most of the career with the Pistons. Was an okay player, 16.7 points per game. Solid enough, but never really fulfilled the potential. But then this is also during a time in which the actually getting the number one pick, it still wasn't quite the same. Like, I mean, you definitely had as many guys who were number one overall picks to this point were nothing as compared to what it is later. Obviously the league is expanding, and the value of having that number one pick versus a good team that's going to draft at the bottom is going to change as expansion comes along, and as obviously some tremendous talent from this next generation of great NBA players is coming.
And scouting always plays a factor in that as well, because now we take it so for granted of you get to see all these guys, everybody sees everybody all across the world or whatever. Where a lot of times you hear these old drafts and even a guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit, where it's like, yeah, we saw him in a few games, we thought he was good, so that's it. Like, we drafted him, and it's like, all right, well, maybe I don't know, like maybe we should, but like like you're saying, the value that we sort of astounded. I mean, now it'd be astonishing for us to just think of trading the number one overall pick or not really caring all that much. But like you said, it wasn't that big of a deal. In this era, and it starts to get a little bit more important in the next kind of group of people that we see. Maybe because people see, oh, geez, this is really valuable. We should probably use this well. Yeah,
right. I mean, the next three in 68, Elvin Hayes with the San Diego Rockets, 69, Milwaukee Bucks at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Might have heard of him. In 1970, Detroit Pistons get Bob Lanier, all our Hall of Famers, all our top 50 players. Obviously, Kareem is in the greatest of all time discussion. And these were, Kareem was obviously a franchise-changing big man. Hayes and Lanier didn't really do well. We have another episode coming up, with Lanier specifically, where these guys were great individual players, but the team success didn't really come. Hayes later with the Bullets, along with Wes Unseld, that later in the 70s did, and Lanier would be more of a role player on some of those 80s Bucks teams, but. And I guess that kind of separates, Kareem being one of the greatest of all time with Hayes and Lanier, very good, excellent top 50 players, but not quite the same caliber.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're talking. It's hard to be compared or sandwiched with Kareem as the meat of that sandwich, unfortunately for Hayes and Lanier. But yeah, I mean, decent, really good NBA careers, I'd say, but just not franchise changing all time greats like a Kareem was. But still, if I made a number one all pick and I'm just trying to pick Bob Lanier, that's not bad. Yeah. I'll take it. But certainly not the game changer like Kareem. I mean, but there few are game changers like Kareem. So
yeah, and we talked about Lanier in our top 50 project. I mean, Lanier was exceptionally productive guy. I mean, really, probably a little bit, underrated for how well he performed in his career. Kind of stuck on those rough Pistons teams.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And next we have Cleveland with Austin Carr, Mr. Cavalier from Notre Dame, one of the greatest college scorers of all time. Unfortunately, not a really strong pro career, cut short with injuries and not really a very efficient scorer in the pros. Did average 15.4 points per game but didn't really stand out much elsewhere. And the highlight of his career was leading being part of a pretty good group of players that helped lead the Cavs to that miracle of Richfield 76 playoff run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, just kind of a pretty disappointing number one overall pick. Just not a whole lot there. As you said, injuries and other issues came into play, but yeah, just not a great number one overall pick. But
yeah, the knee injuries might have changed things for him.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it looked like he had a lot of talent to be great, but it just didn't come together for him.
Yeah. And then next we talked about before LaRue Martin for the Portland Trailblazers out of the Loyola University of Chicago, and he's dealt with a lot in breaks of the game. They're interesting. This is at the point of the book is being written. He's been out of the league and is trying to kind of get back in, and this, of course, this burden of expectations being placed on him, being picked number one, even though it seemed like a weird pick at the time, and it definitely obviously worked out very poorly because he's one of the worst number one overall picks in NBA history.
Yeah, just a lot of things didn't really work out for him. I mean, in breaks of the game and otherwise, you hear that, the Portland's GM, they saw him favor matchup. He had a matchup with Bill Walton, and he went, neck and neck with Bill Walton, and that was like, oh man, well there you go. I mean, that guy's got to be great. So these GMs, they watched a couple games with him where he really dominated, was pretty good. I mean, yeah, at Loyola, he averaged 18.2 points per game, 15.9 rebounds. So people kind of look at those numbers, and they're pretty gaudy numbers. And a 6'11" center, and this is, obviously this era where it's, the big men ruled the world. And played it favorably against, Walton and a few other guys. And then it just didn't work out. I mean, and the problem was, too, it was almost immediate where everybody just kind of knew that this guy just didn't, for whatever it was, it just didn't have it to be in the NBA, whether it was, and I don't know if it's necessarily a desire, but maybe a killer instinct, as you hear a lot in the breaks of the game. He was a very nice guy. He was a very humble person. He's still now, people regard him as the nicest dude. When you interview him, he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, it didn't really work out in the NBA, but whatever. Like most people would really be upset about it, but he kind of goes, I made a life for myself. It's not that big of a deal. It's fine. I didn't work out, and that's it. So, and people mentioned him as being that kind of guy, even when he was playing, that it was like he just didn't have that killer instinct, didn't have that desire to be great. And that, of course, is a number one overall pick. You obviously want that a little bit, but yeah, just a guy who just never really figured it out at all and has some really, really bad numbers for a number one overall pick. But was only in the league 3 years and was out. So
yeah, I think 4 seasons, 271 games, 14 minutes per game, 5.3 points, 4.6 rebounds on less than 42% shooting. So obviously not
for a 6'11" center. Not great. No,
not great. No. So the next series of players all dealt with either injuries or drug issues or a mix of both in some cases. 1973 was Doug Collins with the 76ers. 1974 famously was Bill Walton with the Portland Trailblazers. 1975 with David Thompson with the Atlanta Hawks, who did not play for the Atlanta Hawks, which we talked about in a previous episode. And in 1976, John Lucas with the Houston Rockets. So Walton and Collins dealt with a lot of injuries throughout their careers. Collins had some good years with the Sixers. Walton, of course, famously short-lived time with the Trailblazers, but had the brilliant 77 and 78 seasons before the injuries really took their hold. Thompson didn't play for the Hawks. He ended up defecting to the ABA for the Nuggets, and then once the Nuggets joined the NBA the next season, he played for a few really great years with the Nuggets before the drug issues came in. And then John Lucas in 76 was really good, a strong point guard for the Rockets. He and actually Doug Collins were famously involved in what was considered a bogus charge call, with Collins taking the charge from Lucas in the 77 playoffs, which if it had gone the other way, there's a good chance Houston would have gone to the finals instead of the 76ers in 1977. So
damn Doug.
Yeah.
we always hated Doug Collins.
Flopping Doug, yep.
Exactly. His old nickname.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have anything to add to those guys, but
not really. I mean, Thompson was probably Thompson and Walton, of course. I mean, we don't really have to say much about those guys. Everybody kind of knows the history of those. I mean, Bill Walton, of course, all-time great player. Just the injuries just absolutely destroyed what was a great or what was on the path to be a great career. And David Thompson was a guy who, of course, for being an overall player had a great career, but for the Atlanta Hawks as the number one overall pick, not so much because he didn't play at all for them. So that's not great. But no, he carved out a pretty nice career. But of course, yeah, Atlanta Indiana probably would have preferred him, do it while playing under their team as opposed to, in another league. But those things happen. And then, Lucas and Collins, they kind of speak for themselves as well. But Thompson, solid career. Of course, the drug issues kind of derailed what would have been a decent, because he was still a very good player, but then you could see the drop off just happen so fast. And it's like, well, what the hell's going on here? And obviously now we know, of course, the drug issues happen. But a really, really good overall player. And then Bill Walton again, a guy who could have been one of the best of all time, but just his injuries and his body just would not let him do it. So
yeah, I mean, still a top 50 player, made that list, and he's still got obviously for what he accomplished in a limited time, obviously some great things. So the next couple of years, some okay to solid players, but disappointments considering where they were picked. 1977, Milwaukee Bucks selected Kent Benson from Indiana. He was part of that undefeated Indiana team, the last undefeated team in college basketball history. And had a long career in the league, but was never really a star. But most famous probably for his very first game where he elbowed Kareem in the stomach. Kareem doubled over and then turned around and then knocked him out with a punch. So
welcome to NBA kid.
Yeah, Kareem broke his hand, and then Benson, was. Obviously got knocked out in the situation. So that's probably the most notable thing. He played a few years with the Bucks and with the Pistons, then I believe with the Jazz. So was kind of, we talked about in our Jordan episode about the white stiffs that dominated the 80s, and I think he was definitely in that club.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. If he was possibly a different guy, I don't know if he would have hung around in the league as long as he did. But no, I mean, it's a decent player, but just not what you want from a number one overall pick whatsoever.
Yeah.
Especially from Milwaukee, a team that, it was really, really, I mean, at that point, too, I mean, they could have really built, even more of a dynasty than they had, and it didn't really, just kind of all started unraveling there.
Yes, and then the 78 draft was Mychal Thompson. Funny, I never really thought about it, but Portland actually got the number one pick even after that 78 season where they had, I guess they had the best record in the league at that point. They had 15-10 start, and then they lost Walton, but they got Mychal Thompson out of it. I believe that was a trade with the Pacers. So, and he had a good, solid career. Probably disappointing for number one pick. He was a key role player for the Lakers in their last few years, their dynasty, and had some good years with Portland. So it wasn't a bad guy, but he definitely probably disappointing for a number one overall pick. It's interesting because I'm not exactly sure what the standard is for disappointing for number one overall pick, because obviously you're only going to have a handful of if you're worse than Magic Johnson, you're not a disappointment, but who do you have
exactly, yeah.
Who do you have to be better than to not be a disappointment? I mean, that's sort of an interesting, because the expectations are so high, but so many more players end up being pretty good than being all time. So it's not really fair to think, you have to be LeBron or Magic Johnson or whoever in your disappointment. But I don't know what point you become just okay, you're fine. It was fine that we picked you here.
Right. Yeah. That's why it'd be so hard to be to pick number one and to be a number one overall pick. I can't imagine the amount of pressure of that, and that's what I mean why teams still kind of maybe screw up, because it's just everyone's going to second guess no matter what. If this guy, even if Anthony Bennett was a 10-point per game guy, and we'll talk about a guy here in a little bit that was the modern era who was 9 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, which is fine. It's a solid rotation player, and it's because he was number one overall pick. It was just this guy's terrible. It's, oh God, what a bust, what a complete disappointment. And it's probably not fair, because we're going through this list here, and a lot of the guys we're mentioning is they had a good career, but they were a disappointment. And it's well, maybe they're not. Maybe just Kareem and Magic Johnson are all time greats, and not So it's definitely an interesting conversation. That's why it's so fascinating to see the progression here, and why we're doing this episode, to see the progression of number one overall picks and see how they're sort of perceived as whether disappointments or all-time greats or whatever. But there's really no middle ground. It's either we need a franchise-changing player, or you're a disappointment. You know what I mean? Or you're an absolute bust. There's maybe 3 levels here that we're talking about, and it's kind of funny because a guy like Mychal Thompson, solid career, but we consider him disappointing, and whether that's fair or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Next, 1979, the Lakers get Magic Johnson.
What a disappointment that guy.
Yeah.
Jeez. Didn't move any tickets. Just nothing for that franchise. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, absolutely not. 1980, Golden State Warriors get Joe Barry Carroll, nickname of Joe Barely Cares.
All-time great nickname, by the way.
Yeah, probably an added disappointment because, he was traded, the Warriors could have had Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish, who they already had, but they traded them both for Carroll. And he had some actually productive okay years. Not good in the advanced stats overall. I mean, he was definitely still a major disappointment. Did have 1 year as an all-star. Middle of his career went over to Italy and played for a year in Italy, which is kind of interesting, given that a star of his stature to do that. I think it was a contract situation where it was basically a holdout, but. So yeah, I'm not that much, but he carved out a 10-year, 11-year career. What was definitely doesn't belong on the list of like the worst busts ever, but is more in that like one tier up where it was a disappointment, but because I don't think he was good enough to be considered like a good solid player, but he was not bad enough to be considered a total bust either.
Yeah, I would agree.
1981, Dallas Mavericks got Mark Aguirre, another good player with solid career, probably disappointing for a number 1 overall pick, although he did lead Dallas to some pretty good help, with some other good players, Orlando Blackman and so forth in the 80s for the Mavericks, and then of course went over to the Pistons and was there for their 2 championships. So in the controversial trade for Adrian Dantley, but probably was the right call for them at that point because Aguirre ended up having more longevity and probably helped them to be able to win that title. So yeah, I mean. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe he's about like the right where that's like kind of the minimum expectation you might have for a number 1 overall pick. Like Mark Aguirre might be that guy.
Yeah, like a solid career, helped the team, go to many playoffs. Like a solid rotation piece, a guy that you could just pluck into your lineup, and he was good to go from the beginning and ready to produce for you guys from the beginning. I mean, not a developmental project really, just a guy that came in ready to go and made that team. I mean, made pretty much any team he was on better by being on it, and that's really all you can ask. I would say. Yeah,
I mean, he was an all-star, like a guy who led some good playoff teams. Obviously, he had some issues with there was some locker room issues between there and some ego stuff, and there was that aspect to him as well. But probably on the court, it's probably about what I would want. 20 points per game, 5 rebounds per game. 48% shooting. Pretty decent numbers overall. So yeah, I think he's probably about like maybe the median outcome or so.
Yeah, it's good.
Next, 1982, James Worthy. He's a guy. The numbers don't stand out, but he obviously was a really important part for. I mean, he had good numbers, but he's on the top 50 list and a Hall of Famer, and just ended up being in the perfect situation for him as far as complementing his skills and and delivering in, especially in big situations. Obviously, the 1988 Game 7 triple-double. So that obviously worked out pretty well. They had other options there like Dominic Wilkins and some other things. I think they were looking at trying to get Ralph Sampson to come out early as well. So things like that. So probably Worthy was the best of those options, even if he wasn't necessarily the best overall player.
Yeah, I love the idea. I mean, can you imagine what would happen now if a team won the NBA championship and then had the number 1 overall pick? Like, can you even fathom like the outcry that would occur for something like that? It would be amazing, but
yeah, it certainly would.
I could just like the Cavs, just like, all right, cool, number 1 overall pick. All right, Ben Simmons. It's like, no, you know what I mean? Like, I just love this idea that like now we talk about these super teams, but that's again, we talk about how teams just didn't value these things properly because like teams would just trade away these picks and do all this sort of stuff. It's like, who needs a draft pick? Whatever, just give us that 32-year-old guy that's reliable, and it's like, all right, fine, we'll just get James Worthy and add him to a team that just won the championship. So that's it's pretty good though. But I do love old NBA, the old Wild West of NBA trades and NBA draft trades and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it would be incredible. I just would love to see the outcry one year if that happened. Some team just I feel like the closest we got was like that Nets barrage where they were just trading every pick they had for like 10 years. That was pretty fun. But
that was pretty fun.
I don't know.
Memories. Yes, and
then, the good old days.
And it ends up with not having Anthony Bennett on your team.
It all comes full circle.
Yeah, it all does. So 83 and 84, the Rockets draft their 2 twin towers, Ralph Sampson at 83, Hakeem Olajuwon in 84. Obviously, Hakeem worked out tremendously well. Although it took a while. We got another show where we're going to talk about how there was a period. Well, they did have immediate success and made the 86 finals, but there ended up being some a lull period before the great teams of the mid 90s. For Sampson, was a guy who just was one of the most hyped college players of all time. Was tremendous in college and was pretty good for a brief time. Although interestingly enough, his career win shares for 48 are worse than Pervis Ellison, Joe Barry Carroll, and Kwame Brown. So he's a guy who's thought of as being, pretty productive in the NBA and, before injuries, really got to him. But, the advanced numbers are not strong for him, and I don't know exactly what to make of that, other than just the maybe it was rough playing with Olajuwon because he maybe played some out of position or things like that. I don't know, but because he actually was stronger, at least production wise, before Olajuwon got there. So, or maybe the injuries were taking a toll even before the serious ankle one that he basically derailed his career.
And his shooting was always, it wasn't a great shooter, so that probably played into a little bit of it because he was a guy that didn't play as much like around the basket as we kind of assume. He was a guy that, was out a little bit doing some stuff and was always kind of in between his game too because he kind of wanted to be more of a shooter and they wanted to be more down low and that kind of causes issues as well. But yeah, the advanced numbers never really like Ralph Sampson, which is kind of funny because I wouldn't initially think of him as a bust, but then you put him in the Kwame Brown, Joe Barry Carroll region and it's like, okay, I don't know. Like that's, so it's definitely an interesting thing with him.
Yeah, I would not consider him a bust, but it's just worth noting, hey, the advances just do not like him for whatever reason. So then next we get, after Olajuwon, we get a really great run of big men. Patrick Ewing for the Knicks in 85, obviously Hall of Famer, top 50 player. 1986, Cleveland Cavaliers, Brad Daugherty. Really, production-wise, on a very similar level to these other guys, to Ewing, Olajuwon, and David Robinson's kind of on another level, at least as far as the advanced stats go, but he really just didn't have that longevity because of the the injuries that he dealt with. But he was right there with Ewing, certainly as far as how he produced while he was playing.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at how long some of these other guys we're talking about. Hakeem Olajuwon, retired in 2002, Patrick Ewing 2002, David Robinson 2003, Brad Daugherty 1994. So you look at that like, geez, those guys had almost another decade of their careers, and Brad Daugherty just doesn't have that. But yeah, like on a per win shares per 48 and like advanced metrics, like he's right there with them. It's just he doesn't have those extra decade or whatever like some of those other guys have. And obviously knowing what we know about his injury, he probably would not have lasted or whatever. But a hypothetical is if he keeps up kind of the same path he had, pre-injury or pre having to retire, he maybe could have been thought of as one of those guys. But yeah, as a per game level, absolutely worthy of being a number one overall pick and produced, as well or in some cases even better than some of those guys.
Yeah, and helped turn around the Cavs, who were not a good team before 86, and sparked that turnaround, of course, along with Mark Price and Larry Nance and those guys. So after that, 1988, Danny Manning, very hyped out of college, out of Kansas, played for the Clippers. Good, solid career, but he had dealt with some knee injuries, I believe, and kept them from him being an excellent player, but kind of had a pretty good, was part of some pretty good Suns teams in the late 90s, and was good, but disappointment considering the hype that he came in with.
Yeah, he bounced around a lot too, which I think was another issue with his career. Is like he seemed like he was on a bunch of. Of course, there wasn't that many. Obviously, you have the Clippers, you have the brief stint in Atlanta, Phoenix, and then at the end of his career, which I won't count. Then he bounced around to a bunch of different places. But I think that also kind of hurts his legacy as well because I don't know like if you had to tell me what Danny Manning's team who of course he got drafted by the Clippers, but I would probably say the Suns was his team. But he just has a weird identity where I don't know that he's necessarily remembered for being a member of any one team for very long and just kind of bounced around a little bit as well, even though it wasn't a journeyman until kind of the end of his career, but still just kind of bounced around a little bit more than what you would assume kind of a number one overall pick or a very good number one overall pick would.
Yeah, definitely. So 1989, one of the more notorious number one picks of all time, Sacramento Kings, Pervis Ellison out of Louisville. One of your favorite nicknames, I know.
Yeah, Never Nervous Pervis. That's, I believe, one of the worst nicknames in basketball history. What is your take on Never Nervous Pervis?
It's not great, but I'm not sure what else you have to go with Purvis.
It doesn't need anything. It could just be Pervis Ellison. I don't know.
He could be.
I guess having not watched him at Louisville, I can't say that he was, because if he was a guy that was legitimately never nervous, then I get it. You're like, wow, that guy's never nervous, and his name's Pervis. I get it from that standpoint, but it just seems kind of forced. It seemed like we had to come up with something around with Purvis. Okay, nervous. There we go. We're done.
Yeah, but nervous doesn't make sense. So it has to be never nervous. Yeah,
right. Getting nervous Pervis, because that's not nobody's going to draft you if you're nervous Pervis. No one's going to draft you number one overall and expect you to be a star for the Sacramento Kings Pervis Ellison became. So we're good.
Yeah, I believe that was during Bill Russell's short-term stint being the coach and GM of the Kings, which did not go well. So
no, it did not, because Pervis did not was not good.
Yes, Danny Ainge referred to him as out of service Pervis, which
that's a good nickname.
Yeah,
even though I don't like Danny Ainge, I like that nickname. So
it's fair enough.
I wonder if he said it to his face, because I feel like Pervis would not be very happy with that.
Probably not a nice thing to do.
But Danny Ainge isn't a nice person, so it's fine.
It's probably true. He played 474 games in 12 seasons, or 11 seasons. So not
great. I mean, it's kind of funny though. He, his rookie year, he had a ton of issues, and Sacramento just immediately traded him, which is always kind of fun. In 1991, he became a starter and was named to the NBA Most Improved Player. He averaged 20 points per game, 11.4 rebounds per game. So looked like he had something there, and then the knee injuries just persisted, and he just never ever could figure it out. But that one year, you kind of got a glimpse into this guy could be okay, and it just never came together for him though.
Yeah, definitely. So next, 1990, Derrick Coleman with the New Jersey Nets. Good player with a solid career, probably disappointing for the number one pick. Similar for 91 with the Charlotte Hornets, Larry Johnson. And both these guys didn't necessarily stay super long with their original teams. Obviously, Larry Johnson ended up going to the Knicks, and Derrick Coleman ended up bouncing around here and there a little bit. I mean, Coleman, those early Nets teams had some potential. Obviously, Drazen Petrovic dying, the fatal crash, kind of helped, keep that team from, growing naturally together along with Kenny Anderson. That might have been a different story had that not happened. But he was always kind of, he was kind of considered, a little mercurial, maybe a little bit of the, kind of the Boogie Cousins of his day. I think Boogie showed a little bit more, dynamism, and excitement, but I think Coleman was right there in terms of just being this incredibly graceful, athletic big man who seemed like he was there to dominate the league, and he played well, 16.5 points per game, 9.3 rebounds. I mean, he was above average player, but maybe a little bit disappointing for that level.
Yeah, fairly or unfairly, he always got the tag as oh man, you could be so much better. Just be better. And he was he doesn't it was always that he didn't want to be better, that he was lazy or whatever. And I think he was, I've seen him recall, he was just kind of I don't know, I'm just kind of doing what I do. He was very much a guy that just kind of played his game and did his thing or whatever. And people just, because they saw that what he was able to do and what he was able to do on the court, and this freak athleticism that he had when he was younger, and thought, okay, this guy can be awesome and can be great, and he just never reached that great level. And people always just attribute that to laziness or aloofness or whatever, but it could have just been that was his ceiling. But he was still a very, very good overall player, solid career, but disappointed many franchises. I think 3 or 4 different teams were all right, we got Derrick Coleman, let's go, and it was oh, all right, never mind. He's not that great, he's not that type of player, but still I'd say a pretty solid career. Larry Johnson as well, he's a guy that remembered very well from the 90s for playing for the Charlotte Hornets, for the grandmama stuff, for being a very dynamic player, but really fell off a cliff pretty quickly once injuries got him, and once he kind of went to the Knicks. I mean, had a little bit going his first few years with the Knicks, but just did not have the longevity that you would think. But solid player, I don't know, a decent number one overall pick, I guess, but not. I don't know if Charlotte got quite what they probably would want out of Larry Johnson, other than probably sold a lot more starter jackets because of him. So
those Hornets starter jackets were like a hot thing. Exactly. They naturally were. I mean, he was a marketing superstar. I mean, he was he's kind of considered the next Charles Barkley, I think, sort of for a while. At least he kind of had a similar frame and style, at least kind of appeal. He was kind of the bad boy in college with that UNLV team. So Larry Johnson, I think he's a guy he maybe got lost a little bit in that bit of history, but was an important player for a while, even if he was not super successful. 92, of course, Shaquille O'Neal with the Orlando Magic, one of the greatest ever. I guess, he left the Magic so quickly that would be the only thing that would be, the only regret there is they weren't able to keep him beyond the 4 years. But he obviously, was performed well, got them to the finals, was, probably top 15 player ever, So no regrets there. Definitely the kind of thing you want to land on when you get a Hall of
exactly.
Famer.
Yeah, that was kind of a no doubter as well. So it kind of worked. But I guess maybe not a no doubter. You never know. It could have been weight issues or something like that came in. But obviously the Magic were going to take him when they took him. Obviously everybody kind of pointed to him of being that great player, and I think he absolutely lived up to all of it. Yeah, like you're saying, Orlando maybe didn't get the whole end of that they wanted. Right. But still, I would say, the years that they did have him, as short as they were one of the the premier NBA franchises, NBA Finals appearance, that sort of stuff. So drafting him and they immediately were on a championship, sort of track right off the bat, and that's all you can really ask for a number one overall pick, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. 93 Orlando Magic. They ended up trading him, Chris Webber, out of Michigan, and he's a likely Hall of Famer to me. Some would consider him maybe a bit disappointing in his career. He did have he bounced around a little. I mean, he ended up with Golden State for a year, had the issues with Don Nelson, that ended up in Washington for a few seasons before settling in to Sacramento and being part of the great teams there. And he had some had some tremendous skills, obviously, for his size, and great passer and a great player. It took a while for him to actually be on a winning team, but once he was able to establish that, Sacramento obviously had a great run, didn't make the finals, but only because they were behind one of the great dynasties of all time.
Yeah, no, I'd say a solid number one overall pick. What are your thoughts? It's probably a larger topic, but I've seen a lot of it recently where people always talk about, oh man, Shaq and Webber would have been such a great combo as opposed to Shaq and Penny or whatever. I kind of like the Shaq Penny dynamic a little bit more than the Webber O'Neal. I don't know if I quite see how the Webber O'Neal works, but what do you think about that? Would you have stuck with Webber, or are you okay with the? Yes, we're doing revisionist history from things from like 30 years ago, but would you have traded? That's what we do. This is what this whole podcast is. So whatever, screw it, we're doing it. Would you have kept Webber, or would you have make the trade for Penny?
I think Shaq Penny was, that was a great combination. I think those skills really blendable. I don't see Webber really fitting in with Shaq that well. I mean, he wasn't that much of an outside shooter, if I recall correctly. And there were other things. I mean, he obviously had great passing and great talent, but I mean, not only did they get Penny Hardaway, who was better than Webber, up until 98, 99 for sure, I would say. And they got like 2 or 3 first round picks for him in addition to that. So I mean, I think, considering all the factors in that deal, I definitely would have done that. Yeah, I don't see Webber. I mean, they're so talented. Yeah, maybe they could have made it work, but I don't know if it's the best way to optimize your team, or having someone like Penny Hardaway, who again was tremendous up until he had his own injuries. I think that was definitely a better fit. Personality wise, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Webber and Shaq would have really gotten along any better than Penny and Shaq did. So.
Yeah, I like the Penny Shaq dynamic a little bit more than the Webber one. Webber, it would have been fun because everybody thinks, the point forward, all that sort of stuff. But I like the dynamic of Penny and Shaq. So I am with you, Orlando Magic general manager. I forgot his name. Name escapes me right now, but he made the right trail.
Yeah, exactly. Next we have the big dog, Glenn Robinson. He, solid player. Good, probably disappointing for a number one overall pick. The advanced stats don't like him all that much, although he did average 20.7 points per game. I recall him, he was part of some, solid teams. Obviously I guess the early 90s Bucks were not the best.
It wasn't until really Ray Allen kind of emerged. I mean, he was a good part of those teams, but it was not until they found a better player, they were terrible. And then once they got a few different players, Cassell came in and Ray Allen, obviously emerged. That's when they got good. So he kind of was better as the third option than being the first option, but still a dynamic scorer. I mean, people kind of forget how much he scored. A lot of it was empty, as you're saying with the stats. But I mean, you look at his career, 20 points per game overall. That's not bad considering those last few years. I mean, he was basically, on stilts last year in Sacramento or San Antonio rather. He had a weird stint in Philadelphia, if I remember correctly too. So, but yeah, as a Milwaukee Buck, I mean, a solid career, was always there, reliable to score, but not necessarily the best team winner type player. So
yeah, didn't have a lot of longevity either. I mean, he only played only 11 seasons, which is a decent career, but the contemporaries around him generally had longer careers, so that's one minor blip in there. But yeah, I mean, solid enough. Probably, like I said, a little disappointing, but he's still a pretty good player. I think also 95 Joe Smith would probably be in that category as well. And he ended up only played a couple years with Golden State before he moved on, and he bounced around everywhere. But I mean, he had a reasonably he had a decent enough career, but 11 points, 6.4 rebounds for his career. A lot of that toward the end was in a small role, so that probably depressed that a little bit. But not getting a whole lot, didn't necessarily get a whole lot out of that.
And it's a weird draft, too. If you actually look at that history of that draft, that 95 draft, and there are some very good players in there, but it's like, Joe Smith, per like overall win shares, I think he ranks like 7th. I'm looking at it. He ranks 7th because we got obviously Garnett, Rasheed Wallace, Michael Finley. Then, like Brent Barry, Antonio McDyess, Kurt Thomas, Damon Stoudemire, Jerry Stackhouse. Joe Smith's right in the middle of all those guys. Like people think of him as kind of this all-time bust or whatever, and it's like, yeah, Kevin Garnett was an insane risk, and I understand why, you wouldn't have picked him number 1 if you're Golden State. And then, there's not really, I don't know, like Rasheed was great, but I get why there was some, reservations about getting him. And, Michael Finley wasn't picked till, 21st. He was obviously a guy that a lot of people passed up. Brent Barry is Brent Barry. I mean, whatever. Antonio McDyess was fine. So like, like we look at Joe Smith as an all-time bust because he wasn't like, his number 1 overall pick and he wasn't that great and he didn't stick with that team very long. But that was not a draft that was just like brimming with like game-changing talent other than, a Garnett and a Wallace maybe are the only 2 guys you really look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, NBA Trades did a nice podcast looking at that Warriors team and kind of looking at, comparing Joe Smith to the other guys in that class. And that's a recommended one from a few months ago if anyone wants to check that out. Our good friends at NBA Trades, a great podcast. Next, a couple pretty good players. In 1996, the 76ers, Allen Iverson, and even better, 1997, San Antonio Spurs get Tim Duncan, probably top 15, definitely top 15, top 10 player ever. Iverson, top 50 player, or at least, in that conversation for sure. I think he did end up making our list that we did. So, 2 Hall of Famers, 2 great picks, obviously, Duncan, being perfect for the Spurs, Iverson, getting Philly, to a certain level, and and obviously being revolutionary in an off the court way even more than on the court. Although obviously played in a was an exciting player as well, at least when he was making shots. But yeah, obviously those are about as successful. I mean, Duncan's as successful as you can imagine, and Iverson was obviously plenty successful as well.
Yeah, and team success too. You look at for both of those guys. Of course, Tim Duncan speaks for itself. We don't have to say much about the Spurs. And then Iverson, for what it's worth, whatever he was. I mean, he got that team to the NBA Finals and got them more success and more notoriety than they had in almost an entire decade after just kind of faltering there throughout the 90s. So yeah, definitely exactly what you want out of your number 1 overall picks, and no complaints on either one of those guys. All time greats, both of them.
Yeah. 1998 LA Clippers, Mychal Olowokandi. Not real good. He has the worst win shares per 48 of any of these players, 0.09. So not a strong career. He did. I mean, I guess his per game stats were, not good, but not for the Clippers. They weren't terrible. 9.9 points per game, 8.0 rebounds per game, but could not get the ball in the basket very well, and
no.
I mean, he played for generally bad teams for his career. So yeah, the Candyman, not so sweet.
Not so much. There was a great quote I found Kareem was talking about when he was coaching, because he was an assistant coach for the Clippers around this time that he had Olowokandi. And this is a great quote about Olowokandi. When I coached for the Clippers, I had to deal with Mychal Olowokandi, a player who perfectly fit the description: talented but uncoachable. At practice, I would attempt to point out Mr. Olowokandi's faults to him. I love how he calls him Mr. Olowokandi. But once he constantly repeated and resulted in lost possessions for the team or personal fouls that sent him to the bench. His reaction to my attempts to correct his bad habits was to take my input as a personal insult and embarrassment. He told me point blank that he would not be criticized in front of the team. He stuck to his word, and as a result had very few successful moments on the court playing the way he wanted to play. He took his place on the list of athletically gifted washouts who have been in and out of the league in the past 10 years. So there's Kareem eloquently burying Mychal Olowokandi. So that's
yes. So next, 1999 Chicago Bulls, Elton Brand, a very good underrated player. Obviously was traded from the Bulls a couple years later, went to the Clippers and had some good run. And unfortunately, he probably had another few years of elite play, but that was cut short because of I believe an ACL injury. Still, to me, he's borderline Hall of Fame. I would say. I think there's an argument
he's an interesting case. Yeah, he's a very interesting case because that guy was super productive for quite a few years as well. I mean, of course, you look at that right as he's kind of getting into his prime too with the Clippers. You start running into a few different issues, and then of course when he goes to Philadelphia, it kind of all falls apart from then on. But yeah, he's a guy who very, very interesting career for him, whether he's a Hall of Famer or not, because the numbers are there, they're gaudy, and he had success too. I mean, those Clippers teams were good with him as without a doubt the best player on them. It's just injuries kind of derailed any of that. So he'll be a very interesting case when it's time or when people kind of discuss him a little bit more.
Yeah. 2000 New Jersey Nets, Kenyon Martin, good player with a solid career, but probably disappointing for a number one overall pick. I mean, was he had exactly a .100 win shares. So that's kind of like what I kind of sort of consider average. Like anything above that's good, getting to great. Anything below that is probably bad. So that's I guess he's right at the average part, you could say.
Yeah, that's the horrendous draft. I would not advise anybody ever to eat and then look at the 2000 NBA draft. Probably Hedo Turkoglu is the number one win share player. Hedo Turkoglu, followed by Mike Miller. So that's all you need to know. Jamal Crawford's in there. I love that. Yeah, Jamal Crawford just kind of slipped in there, and then Michael Redd, and then Kenyon Martin. So that tells you about how bad that draft is. So.
Yeah, so all things considered, Kenyon Martin, I guess, wasn't a bad.
No, I mean, this is a really bad draft, man. Like there's nobody that's good in the draft. Like of those guys, like even if like Hedo Turkoglu is your best player in your draft, like that's probably not a good thing that you don't want to do. So at least it gave us Jamal Crawford, and that's all the things we can ever get. So
98 through 01, 02, just generally not good drafts there for a while.
No. Stromile Swift was the number 2 overall pick, people. That's all you have to, that's all you have to know. Jake Foshko. No.
There was a weird dearth for a while, before LeBron obviously came in and changed everything. But before we get there, 2001, Washington Wizards select Kwame Brown, first number 1 overall pick straight out of high school. Famously was berated by Michael Jordan, who had been the Wizards owner, was his teammate.
That Michael Jordan?
Yeah, that Michael Jordan. Yeah, that one. Yes.
No, stop. Michael Jordan, he's a very tender, nice. No,
not Michael B. Jordan, the actor, but just Michael Jordan. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say that guy seems very nice, but the Michael Jordan, the basketball player, is kind of a dick, so that makes sense.
There you go. He actually showed flashes of potential here and there. And you look at his career numbers and they're not good, but they're not absolutely the worst. So, he carved out a decent big man type role, role player for the Lakers, and kind of later on in his career, but obviously not what you want out of a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, just never really. I think a lot of it was the NBA lifestyle too. As a high schooler, he just wasn't ready for that. And I don't mean he was out partying, doing all that sort of stuff, but I think it's just such a culture shock for a lot of these people to now I'm in the NBA. This is my job. It's a professional. I can't imagine me at 18 trying to do something like that. I mean, I just couldn't have handled it. And you could see that too. There was just he seemed like the guy on the court that anytime he was on, he was thinking of 10,000 things were going through his head, and he just could never quite get it together. So I'm sure that ended up being a big issue for Kwame.
So next, for the Houston Rockets, Yao Ming, excellent player, obviously great importance by being the first player picked number 1 overall from China, and still made the Hall of Fame even though his career was cut short by injuries. But I think even despite the injuries, I think he was a tremendous success for the Rockets.
Yeah, of course, and only if anything from a marketing standpoint as well. Just a guy that was such an important player to the NBA's global expansion. But yeah, I think there's, unquestioned, a great pick for them, and yeah, of course, the injuries kind of ruined what could have been an all-time great career. But still, they had a good little run here and there. They made the playoffs a bunch of times. They got pretty far in the playoffs a few times. It was just he just could never stay healthy. But I still think they would never regret that pick. I mean, I think that was absolutely the right pick at the time, and definitely a worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. I mean, it would be silly to pass up on a Yao Ming if you're Houston. I mean, that would be real tough to do. So not bad. Good pick, Houston. So.
Yes, definitely good. So 2003, Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James, he worked out all right, I would say. Pretty good.
I think I would have gone with Darko Milicic.
Okay, yeah.
You got so much potential there with Darko, man. I mean, LeBron's all right, but imagine Darko on Cleveland. It's a whole different dynamic. Of course, he's in Detroit and he doesn't get to play. That's why he's not good. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if he just went to a team that was terrible, he could have been great. I mean, it makes so much sense. Or Michael Sweetney's another guy too. Jeez.
Oh, Michael Sweetney. Yeah, definitely. I think Michael Sweetney's definitely somebody that the Cavs should have picked. Yeah, that's a good call, Rich. Yeah.
Jarvis Hayes. I didn't know that Jarvis Hayes. Wow, he was 10th in that draft.
Good Lord. Yeah, that's.
And apparently, his nationality is United States and Qatar. I believe that is because he probably plays for a team in Qatar. That's one of my favorite things ever. Is when dudes get dual citizenship.
Yeah.
In places where they definitely don't actually live or aren't actually from, like Jarvis Hayes in Qatar. So there you go.
Hey, good old Jarvis Hayes. 2004 Orlando Magic, Dwight Howard also worked out pretty well for the Magic. Of course, that did not end well, but led them to a finals appearance and some great success and some Defensive Player of the Year awards and all that. Obviously, future Hall of Famer, top 50 candidate. So despite the bitter divorce, you would make that pick every time, I would think.
No, absolutely, certainly.
2005, Andrew Bogut for Milwaukee Bucks. He's been a good player with a solid career. Some very strange politics, but we won't get into that. I would say maybe slightly disappointing for a number 1 overall pick. I think injuries had to do with that too. I mean, he was really on track for kind of something special before that bad hand wrist breaking his arm when he did, and kind of made him. His scoring never really, kind of came back after that. But he did other things well, and obviously he was an important part of Golden State's 2 finals runs, and carved out a good career. Probably maybe like a very very slightly disappointing, I would say, and probably only because the Bucks didn't really get they got the best production out of him, but the most successful years of his career obviously were elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean you look at this draft. Obviously, Chris Paul's a guy who's sixth out, and it's like, oh geez, but two other teams or 3 other teams rather. Missed out on him. Milwaukee, Atlanta, and Utah all picked different guys.
Atlanta didn't pick Chris Paul. Thanks for reminding me.
Sorry.
Really?
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. Well, you could have gotten Ike Diagu. You got Marvin Williams, and he's fine, right? He's a pretty solid player for the Utah Jazz right now. So
he exists, so that's true. I agree with you. I agree.
They could have gotten Rashad McCants. I mean, it could have been Sean May. I mean, there are plenty of terrible players you could have got, but no, Chris. Yeah, sorry, I apologize, but yeah, Bogut not bad. I mean, I at the time I remember that being a big debate about him, but a guy that I think I fit well in Milwaukee when he did, and like you're saying, a lot of production until the injuries kind of caught up. So no, I'm okay with that pick. I think that's not a bad one, but. Chris Paul might have been better, but Marvin Williams is obviously the worst pick of all time. So,
yeah, right, exactly. So,
unquestionably the worst pick ever.
Unquestionably, 2006 Toronto Raptors, Andrea Bargnani. Looked at one point like, okay, maybe he'll figure it out, but it never really happened, and then things got really depressing once he went to the Knicks. So
we should probably just not talk about that.
Yeah, we don't want to. We
have too many
anybody.
Knicks fan listeners; they would.
We don't want. Things have been going well for them. We don't want to make their pain any worse. So,
I mean, I take great pleasure in their pain, but
right, yeah. So we'll move on to feel good story of Greg Oden with the Portland Trailblazers. No.
Oh God, it's a terrible. We got a bad run here. Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, Oden was very good when he actually played, but unfortunately was limited to he played very little for the litany of injuries for the Blazers. It played basically the equivalent of one full season for them, and then did manage after 3 years, managed to come back and played a bit with the Miami Heat in LeBron's last season there, and didn't produce a whole lot, but it was just nice to see him on the court and be healthy and so forth. Unfortunately, he's also had some personal issues and domestic violence situation. And, I'm an Ohio State person, as you know, Rich, and most people listening probably know, and was excited for him coming out and, obviously, unfortunately disappointing for him for his career. But hopefully, hopefully he'll turn things around. He seems like despite the off-court issues that he's had, he has always seemed like a nice guy, and hopefully that's actually true.
Yeah, and revisionist history will say, oh, man, Durant, how could you pass up on Durant? But, I mean, Oden was an absolute monster when he got on the court, and a guy, of course, we're remembering the times, of course, now in today's NBA, of course, you wouldn't pick a guy like a Greg Oden, number one, but even then, I mean, 2007, we're still talking about a time when it's like, this guy is huge, he's dominant, he could score, close to the basket and get every rebound, and it was just health. I mean, it really was. I mean, he was productive anytime he got on the court until, he just couldn't walk anymore, and then his production fell off. But even then, there were still those little spurts where he'd come back and it'd be like, oh, man, here we go, Greg Oden, and then he just could never stay on the court for any length of time. So, of course, the revision history will always say, oh, God, how do you pass up on Durant? That's a, all-time great player or whatever. But at the time, I remember being in the camp of like, no, you got to get a guy like a Greg Oden. I mean, that's a guy who comes around once in a lifetime. It just so happened we didn't know that Kevin Durant was like this skinny, he still is. He's this skinny, what are you doing? You're shooting threes and you're like 7 foot type of guy. But it ended up working out pretty well, so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think people realized Durant was going to be likely to be special, but I think that Oden was just somebody who it looked like on the defensive end could really, just make a huge difference and it really could have been a game changer defensively and could have really been a very, could have been a Hall of Fame level player. I think he had the potential to do that. I mean, obviously it would have taken a long, successful career, but I think he had that level of talent. And obviously the injuries just, made things work terribly. So next, not super exciting. Derrick Rose, 2008.
It gets better soon. We promise. We won't depress any other fan bases here.
Was an excellent player for a short time, but then of course fell by injuries. Won the MVP. Interestingly, may become the first MVP since Bob McAdoo not to make the Hall of Fame, which would be pretty incredible. But
yeah, I wrote an article about that for Hard to Paroxysm when we were housed there, and it was kind of interesting. I heard that question posed by somebody, and I kind of thought about it. I was like, oh, geez, yeah, that's true. He is he would probably be, I think unquestionably will probably be the only MVP ever, to not make the Hall of Fame. So it's very interesting. It's very fascinating too. Who knows? I mean, the trajectory that he's on now. I mean, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but it's hard to say. I don't know, but it'd be shocking if he did make it at this point. It'd just be shocking again to have an MVP not make it. But that's unfortunately what happens when you're great at 22, and then you kind of injuries derail you from there, and you never kind of get it back at any point.
Yeah, and then the more recent draft picks, 2009 Blake Griffin, 2010 John Wall with the Wizards, 2011 Kyrie Irving with the Cavs, and 2012 Anthony Davis with the Hornets.
All busts. Every single one of them busts.
Right. The then New Orleans Hornets, now New Orleans Pelicans. Those obviously all have been, Davis has been monster successful, and the other ones have been very good. Blake's been great. Wall, Wall's been really good. I mean, maybe he might be the only argument of maybe slightly underperform expectations. I think the other guys, and he's still really good in their most important players.
Oh, yeah. He's still great. I mean, that's the thing. Those other guys are like Blake Griffin, obviously, can propel that team and be a big part of that team being, great. Kyrie Irving, of course, speaks for himself after the NBA Finals, of course. Anthony Davis. But John Wall is still like a guy that, personally, I don't think he's I've had debates with friends all the time about John Wall or whatever, but he's still as an overall pick. I mean, that's still a guy that you're not really disappointed by that guy being your number one overall pick. I mean, it could be well worse than that, and he's fine. He's a solid player, a dynamic, great player that you look at and go, okay, at some point if we get maybe the right people around him, he can be good. But by himself, I mean, he's fine, absolutely a fine player and fine number one pick. So
yeah. So 2013, Anthony Bennett, things did not start well for him, and pretty much got worse throughout the, it didn't really get any better.
No, that's he famously started his career, and I know if anybody who was around, this was a big thing, and unfortunately, the fans caught onto it too, which was terrible. He started his career 0-15. His first game, he was 0-5, then he was 0-3, and then it just kept going on for there. He made his first NBA shot in his fifth game. And he was 1 for 5 that game. So at the end of that game, he was 1 of 20 in his NBA career. That's when pretty much everybody kind of went, oh no, this is not going to go well, is it? But there was still hope. He had his first double-digit scoring game, 33 games into his career. But then it just never got together. There was issues about his work ethic. It never, ever seemed to flow very well with Anthony Bennett. Now, as we mentioned, he's cut from his fourth NBA team. Just 23 games played this year, 5.0 points per game, 3.4 rebounds per game. For the worst team in the league, with pretty much the least amount of talent. So that's not good. When you're cut from the worst team that has no talent, it might be the end of the road for you. So
yeah. And then since 2014, the Cavaliers selected Andrew Wiggins. Of course, he went to the Timberwolves. He joined a year later by Karl Anthony Towns. Those seem like good building blocks, although Wiggins oddly has just really terrible advanced stats. And he scores pretty well, but other than that, at least production-wise, seems to be limited. But, he's still obviously very young, so we'll see how he develops there. Cat's obviously been very good. And then Ben Simmons with the 76ers has not played a game yet, but, so we'll see how things go with him.
Could add another one to the list. We'll have to update. We'll update in 3 years. Let's make a hot take in 3 years and decide if he's a bust or not. So, but right. I think we should definitely do that. That's the responsible thing to do for this podcast, of course. Now we'll see.
Sounds good. Well, everyone, thanks for checking us out. You can find us at thestepback@fansided.com. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Just search for Over and Back. Find us on Twitter and Facebook at Over and Back. And thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon.